This video will be about firearms primarily and a couple of subjects. One, a YouTube channel called CRS Firearms, the person on camera for the channel being arrested by the ATF or federal authorities. The complaint was him possessing machine guns, and the way the ATF defines a machine gun, it's anything that can make something act like or simulate a machine gun, in effect, which sometimes makes a great deal of sense since it keeps people from finding some sort of loophole and trying to get out of it. And other times, in this case, it was a drawing of the two components on a piece of metal that if you were to follow the lines, you could make them or not. And my contention in the video was that they were not accurately done so that you could do so it would not work unless you knew exactly what to do. It leaves a level of ambiguity, and unless you've done it to some sort of engineering standards for drawing a line that is not a zero-dimension thickness, you have to start off with a bias of either doing outside the lines, inside the lines, or on the top edge of each line, which is not being borne out. And there was another version where the lines were not done. They were scratched into the surface of it, milled in, to where you could, if you could get it directly in the center, it would be presumed that it's in the center of the line. And another version where they were completely cut out, except for little bits of metal where you'd have to bust it loose and then click off those bits. The ones that CRS Firearms had were the ones that were etched in and or line drawings. And they were not made in such a way that you could make them work unless you knew already how to make them work. You'd already have to know what the measurements are. And in the video thumbnail, it shows archives that if you open those archives by typing them in, will take you to one of a couple of pages that give you dimensions and information on this that's been available for a very long time. There's also another variation of it that uses a coat hanger, and there's a bunch of others. And the thing is, the ATF trying to regulate these things is one of those things where taking a picture of it, describing it, talking about it, or just, one guy Morse coded the dimensions, and another person did it as a three-dimensional model that you just go get it. None of them will work unless you use that information as a starting point to just make one out of metal and do a decent job. And my contention was that they arrested him, and I didn't really spell it out in the video, but I mentioned that the ones they arrested him for, him specifically, because that's what it has to be, about him, not about someone else's website or someone else's pile of stuff, was that they were arresting him for ones that they claimed that if you milled them out, it would make the parts for a machine gun. The trouble is the ones he had wouldn't do that because they'd have to make a lot of design decisions to make it work. Now, I'm not going to go into any more details about that. So anyway, I was told I was wrong because they were absolutely the correct dimensions. And again, they're not. If it's a line drawing or even etched in lines, it's not accurate. You have to be told whether or not it's the outside edge of the groove that's cut or the inside edge. Do you just put it down the middle and then round it off so that they match them front and back? That's not explained. And also, they left out a key detail that part of the metal had to be bent at a specific angle for a distance of a little under a millimeter, for instance. Or preferably ground to where it was more thin. So no, they're not immediately usable, and the ATF is essentially lying and submitting that lie to the court. And this is CRS Firearms and a bunch of other people basically setting them up. This was, for lack of a better word, this is entrapment of them. Now, besides someone saying I'm just wrong, we have a few people. What's the point of your video? Seems like you wanted to pretend you're a Second Amendment supporter. I support your right to make, keep, and bear arms. I don't see a reason to restrict it because it doesn't simply work at all. However, if someone wants to restrict it, they need to do so in a fair way. And more importantly, a realistic and effective way that will actually make things better instead of just simply acting like you solved the problem when you haven't. In states where they have very strong regulation, they tout lots of figures, but if you look up the raw figures, no, they're not doing any differences. The proof's in the pudding, and they haven't proven anything. You spent most of your time repeating that what you're showing is inaccurate. No, I was describing why it isn't accurate unless you include the dimensions with it. It doesn't have dimensions written on it. In fact, one of the versions of the Lightning Link card or the drop-in autosir, the DS, Buenos Dias, is if it doesn't have the dimensions so you can check your work, you don't have the dimensions right. So that's straightforward. And then the person says, that's because you're frightened to run afoul of the ATF. I'm not. I advocate for people thumbing their nose at the ATF by actually staying within the law because they made these rules, and I tell people how to get what they want and make it. And I also tell people if you don't want to deal with the firearms industry and or the memesters telling you there's a drought of bullets, we don't have enough cartridges, we're running out of ammunition, which of course causes people to do a run on the ammo shops and causes shortages. They create those shortages to make money. Learn to reload. I tell people all sorts of things like this. I do videos on the subject and empower them. I also explain to them, here are the trips and traps you're going to go through, so here's how to avoid them. This whole thing, someone yelling at me or anybody else saying, you're frightened of something, you have fear. That's like yelling homophobic when really you're just a hater. So let's go on. Nobody's homophobic. They hate. They're just haters. The rest of your time you spent calling people stupid. And you specified other people. Okay, that would be a legitimate complaint. So we have one so far. If I did that. Let's assume I did. Let's move on. You're putting CRS firearms in the title as clickbait. No, I'm not. It's about him basically this whole thing was him tricking the ATF into actually just posting and proffering faked evidence. Because he can definitively say, you're hauling me in for this, for conspiracy or whatever, for things that don't work. Because he didn't have any ones that would work that way. He keeps hinting at it. You can watch the older videos. He kept hinting at it. He did not have anything that would cause these problems, and neither did the other persons, apparently. You could put up a link to his GoFundMe. No, because that will get me flagged. It has nothing to do with whether it's his, it's just GoFundMe. My channel's been hit enough times that I already know I can't put in links to certain things. GoFundMe, any fundraising, affiliate links, or anything at all. And especially if I'm covering firearms subjects. I'm better off not doing so. But that's actually kind of a legitimate argument. But saying that it's clickbait when that's literally the subject matter and a lot of other people did a video about it, no. So I'm not pretending to be a Second Amendment supporter. I just think that if you have to argue with lawyers in a courtroom about what your inalienable rights are, they're not really inalienable, so you shouldn't do that. And then next thing is I tell people to make, keep, and bear arms and also do reloading so that you disempower anybody who would create these shortages and lie to you about them. And especially blame it on someone else. Yes, I was repeating over and over again that my video has inaccurate data because it's a representative sample of what was done. I did mod it and I tried to clean it up, but I also made sure it was warped a little bit, but it doesn't change anything. If the line is this thick and you're supposed to cut on this side, or in the middle, and it's not explained to you, you can't make it accurately. You also have to have the numbers to double check it against. Thought I made that clear. But saying I called other people stupid, okay, you could say that's a legit complaint and I shouldn't have done it. That's a legit complaint or a critique. Let's get on to the next person. You lost me at labeling Trump supporters. Me trolling anybody out there that voted for Trump and is being a sport about losing is something I'm going to keep doing. Trump lost. If that triggers you, then you deserve to be triggered. Hillary Clinton lost. A bunch of people were literally shaking. It's an election. Shut up. Everybody needed to grow the hell up. They didn't. I voted for Trump and have zero desire to own a machine, I guess, gun, and actually don't even like semi-autos. They're okay. For pistols, I think they may actually be kind of needed, maybe even mandatory for some people. I prefer making other designs. I want to come up with something new. I do believe in the Second Amendment. Well, I believe in it too. It exists. That doesn't change whether or not it's being enforced or ignored or tampered with or should be ignored. I'm in favor of ignoring the damn thing because it doesn't make a difference. If you have what you think is a human right or an inalienable right and it requires someone else to honor it, then it's not inalienable. Make it impossible for people to take your rights away. I think everybody should have the right to be able to find a place to live and live off what they have to work with. And we live in a world where you can't really get any dirt anymore. I don't have a right to exist in a very basic way that even the UN would acknowledge normally. I do believe in the Second Amendment, he says. For those of you that voted for Biden, I hope you're enjoying high fuel prices, empty shelves, expensive ammo. That last part, you know damn good and well has nothing to do with them. And the ATF running rampant. They've always done that. High inflation. You deserve it. Well, you're existing in the same world. And if you really believe Biden is the cause of it, you're an idiot. Just like Trump is, you'll immediately exonerate Trump for causing the same thing a couple of times. When Trump got elected and everybody thought everything was going to be hunky-dory with guns and stuff, and then it didn't turn out that way, they started blaming every liberal they could because they can't stomach the idea that it doesn't matter which party you vote for, the fix is in and you weren't told about it. So you're being a cuck. You're drinking the Flavor Aid because it isn't Kool-Aid. That's not the right wording. And me trolling you because I got away with it here because you're a Trump supporter, that kind of Trump supporter that ignores reality and blames everything on the liberals. Trump is actually guilty of attempted coup d'etat, or at least tolerating it. Trump supporters are guilty of an actual attempted coup d'etat. Whether you don't like it or not, I don't care. No, not all Trump supporters, just like not all Hillary supporters. But if you really believe that us voting is going to change the behavior pattern of this or cause the empty shelves, as for the expensive ammo, that is literally caused by everybody out there that's a gun geek. If they would stop listening to the fear porn. If you're told during Trump's reign of Führerness that you have to worry about your fucking ammo, there is no situation where the gun industry isn't going to every once in a while say, hey, we got a bunch of leftover ammo, we need to dump it, let's drive up the price by telling everybody they're coming for their guns again. I mean, come on, you guys. So yeah, I'm saying the one who said, you lost me at labeling Trump supporters. No, I acknowledge they exist. And I'm not talking about normal people just voted. I'm talking about people who are that Trump supporter, that are mentally unhinged assholes, who are trolling the entire world and can't take it when it's dished out. As for the other guy, you're pretending to be a Second Amendment supporter. I think you should make it to where the amendment doesn't make any difference because it's impossible to enforce any attempt against you, whether it existed or not. I encourage people in other countries to learn how to make keep and bear arms, make them impossible to find, stealth. Don't be an idiot. Don't be a cuck. Buying ammo every time the industry tells you to be a Pavlovian dog. Learn to reload. So anyway, someone had me look at glass slugs on Telflater's Mouse channel that went through a 3A vest, a lawnmower engine, and some ballistic gel gummy bears. That was another request for the day, so I'm going to end the video with that. I don't find them useful because they break up sometimes and they don't other times. Also, there are better shells and slugs that do that. However, ground glass getting in a wound is absolutely terror-inducing, and it did work. So, might be something worth being involved in, but it would involve molding the glass in an appropriate holder. It was an interesting subject matter. So let's review. CRS Firearms was trolling the ATF and they fell for it. It's basically getting them to go out of their way to falsify evidence, which we know the ATF will do. And this may actually set a precedent because even if they back off, they can still drag them in on principle and say, no, they falsified evidence because they said, this card I'm holding could make this thing I'm holding, but it can't because it's the wrong set of dimensions because the dimensions aren't written on it. And by the way, in the video's thumbnail, you can just pause the video or just find it. You can look at the URL that's in there, that's an archive, and go look at the information, and it's accurate enough for you to use it. So that lightning link card thing wasn't as good. And again, outlawing people photocopying. I say it should be spread everywhere on business cards. But believe whatever you wish to. And yeah, I succeeded in trolling at least one of those people that calls themselves a patriot, probably. Or a reasonable person. Maybe they are. But they're not behaving like it yet. And no, it's not all Biden causing it. And no, it's not the conservatives either. It's just the world. Thanks for watching. Have a good day. Good luck with all.